Hello, Miss Ranga. It's me again, Maulana Ilyas, one of your college student. I'm here to do your TARS meeting 11. So let's begin on part 1. She, shoe, ship, ash, rush, push, shit, shaw, washing, Swedish, saw, shake machine, English, shop, show, special, strong, shot, finished, shouldn't sure, wish, demonstration, television, treasure, garage, clothes, casual clothes, pidget, Asia, measuring tape, unusual collision, ships, chips, ship, chip, cherry, shop, chop, catch, watch, children, butter shop, Mrs. Church, check, chump, chops, much, chazier, shoulder, which, cheaper, a delicious chicken, choose, children's lunch, orange juice, rich child, which job, village jail, what chain, college chess, large gentleman, which chair, large cherries, huge jam jar, how much is, teach German. Part 2. Read this text. More US adults who do not already have children are saying they are unlikely to ever have them. A new Pew Research Center survey finds findings that could draw renewed attention to the risk of declining birth rates for industrialized nations. Experts are concerned that the US birth rate, which has declined for the 6 straight years, may not fuel enough population growth on its own to keep the future economy afloat and fund social programs. Women between the ages of 18 to 49 and men between 18 and 59 who said they are not parents were asked the question, thinking about the future, how likely is it that you will have the children someday? In October, 26% of them said it is very likely, a 6-point drop from 2018 when 32% grew to 21% compared to 16% in 2018. When asked for a reason, 56% of childless adults who said it's not all or not too likely they will ever have children said it's because they just don't want them. That's a change from in 2018, when 63% of childless adults in these categories said it was because they had no desire for children. This time around, 43% cited other reasons, including medical issues, economic or financial reason, and lack of partner. Help out of the quicksand. How the child are care crisis is keeping moms out of work. When the pandemic led to a lack of childcare, single mothers like Dennis Tyler were left in the lurch, I don't know, unable to work. Coupled with the recent release of federal demographic data, this point to long-term evolution in parenthood trends in the United States, the spiraling cost of child care. Healthcare and education, along with global instability, including coronavirus pandemic and climate change, could all be contributing to a broader change in attitudes to marriage and prioritize in life. US birth rate falls to its lowest level in decades in wake of pandemic. In April, the Census Bureau reported that in the last decade the US population grew at the second lowest rate of any 10-year period since the nation founding. Pew surveyed 3,866 parents and non-parents online in late October as part of the broader study of nearly 10,000 US adults, known as the American Trans Panel Survey. Those who said they have no children were asked to rate their desire to have them in the future. while adults who said they already have children were asked to rate their likelihood of having more. The same question were asked in a similar poll. Pew conducted in late July to early August 2019, enabling a comparison of trends over time. There was no difference based on gender in the response among parents and non-parents. According to Pew, men and women are equally likely men and women are equally likely to say they will probably not have kids or more kids in the future. There were differences based on age. However, with adults in their 40s far more likely than younger adults to say they are unlikely to have any more children in the future. The Biden administration has attempted to tackle some of the roadblocks to higher fertility through its roughly $2 trillion Build Back Better bill, which recently passed the House and is moving to the Senate. The bill includes funding or universal pre-K, as well as the first national paid family and medical leave program. Part 3. Read this story. She was walking lazily, for the fierce April sun was directly overhead. Her umbrella blocked its rays, but nothing but the heat, the sort of raw, wild heat that crushes you with its energy. A few buffalo were tethered under coconuts, browsing the parched verge. Occasionally, a car went past, leaving the threads in a melting pitch like the wake of ship at sea. Otherwise, it was quiet, and the sea saw no one. In her long white Sunday dress, you might have taken Jeannie Narian for 14 or 15. In fact, she was at 12, a happy, uncomplicated child with a nature as open as the red hibiscus that decorated her black waist-length hair. Generation earlier, her family had come to Trinidad from India as overseers. On the sugar plantation, her father had some success through buying and clearing all around Rio Cristalino and planting it with coffee. And the dusty first, 20 yards ahead of Ginny, our car pulled up. She had noticed it cruise by once before. She did not recognize it and could not make out the driver through its dark windows, themselves as black as its gleaming paintwork. As she walked past it, the driver's glass started to open. "Hello, Ginny," she heard behind her. She paused and turned a slight color rose beneath her dusky skin. Rafi Kirjani was tall and lean. She lean and always well dressed. His black eyes and large white teeth flashed in the sunlight as he spoke. Everyone in Rio Cristalino knew Rafi. Ginny often heard her unmarried sister talk reviewfully of him, of how if only their father were alive and they still had land, one of them might marry him, and then they would squabble over who it might be and laugh at Ginny because he was too simple for many men to want. "How do you know my name, Ravi?" she asked, thrilled. "How do you know mine? Everyone knows your name. You're Miss Kinjani's son, right? And where are you going, Ginny?" She hesitated and looked down at the ground again. "The chapel," she said with a faint smile. "But Ginny has got good thing is go to the temple." His rich, cultured voice with gentle mocking added with a laugh. "Or maybe the temple pundits aren't your taste in color." She blushed more deeply at the reference to Father Oliver. She did not know how to reply. It was true that she liked the young French priest, with his funny accent and blue eyes, and she had been going to Catholic chapel for months before he arrived. She loved its cheerful hymns and its simple creed of one God. So different from others miserable Hindu gods who squabbled with each other like her sister at home. But added to that, the vulgarity of Ravi's remark bewildered her because his family were known for their breeding. People always said that Rafi would be a man of honor, like his father. Raphael looked suddenly grave. His dark skin seemed even darker. It may be that he regretted his words. Possibly he saw the confusion in Ginny's wide brown eyes. In any case, he did not wait for an answer. Can I offer you a lift to chapel? In my 21st birthday present, he asked, putting his sunglasses back on. She noticed how thick the frames were. Real gold, she thought, like the big, fat watch on his wrist. It's Mercedes from Papa. Do you like it? He added nonchalantly. From the set of her umbrella, Ginny peered at small lone cloud that hung much motionless above them. The sun was beating down mercilessly, and there was an urge in air and an overpowering sense of growth. With handkerchief, she wiped the sweat from her forehead. Rafi gave a tug at his collar. It's air conditioned, Ginny, and you won't be late for chapel. He continued, reading her mind, but chapel must have been the last thing in Ravi's mind when Ginny, after a moment's hesitation, accepted his offer. For he drove her instead to a quiet sugar field outside town, and there, with the Mercedes concealed among the sugar cans, he introduced himself into her. Ginny was in the daze, young as she was. She barely understood what was happening to her. The beat of calypso filled her ears, and the sugar cans towed over her as the cold draught from the air-conditioner hair. She lay among the tall, sweet-smelling cans and sobbed until the brief tropical twilight turned to starry night. But she told no one, not even Father Oliver. 2 weeks later, the little market town of Rio Cristalino was alive with gossip. Rafi Kirjani and being promised to hand of Sunita Murpalani, like the Kirjanis, the Murpalanis were an established Indian family, one of the wealthiest in the Caribbean. But while the Kirjanis were diplomats, the Murpalanis were a commercial family. They had made a fortune in retailing, long before the collapse in oil prices had emptied their customers' pocket. And now Murpalani stores were scattered throughout Trinidad and some of the other islands. Prudentially, they had diversified into banking and insurance, and as a result, their influence was felt at the highest level. It was benevolent influence, of course, never abused, for people always said the Murpulanis were a respectable family and well above reproach. They had houses in Port of Spain, Tobago, and Barbados, as well as England and India, but their main residence was magnificent, sprawling colonial-style mansion just the north of Rio Cristalino. The arranged marriage would be the social event of the following year. When Ginny heard of Ravi's engagement to Lodin, she had conceived of him grew into a sort of numb hatred. She was room-haunted by longing to repay that heartless, arrogant brute. She would give anything to humiliate him, to see that leering, conceited grin wiped from his face. But outwardly, she was unmoved. One weekdays, she went to school, and on Sundays, she went still to Father Oliver's afternoon service. Girl, you sure does have a lot confessed to that Whitey, her mother would say to her each time she came home late from the chapel. It's not Whitey, he's a man of God. That is maybe child, but don't forget he doesn't be a man first. The months passed and she did not to see Ravi again. And then it rained. Although August the rain hardly stopped. It rattled precisely on the galvanized roofs until you thought you would go mad with the noise. And if it stopped, the air was as sticky as treacle, and you prayed for it to rain again. Then one day in October, towards the end of the wet season, when Ginny's family were celebrating her only brother's 18th birthday, something happened that she had been dreading weeks. She was lying in the hammock on the balcony, playing with her 6-year-old nephew Penny. Suddenly, Penny cried out, "Ginny, why are you so fat?" Throughout the little frame house, all the celebrities stopped, and the balcony creature's eyes were turned upon Ginny, and you could see what the boy meant. "Gods, why? Gods have mercy on you, Virginia! What's the shape of your belly?" cried Miss Narine, exploding with indignation, and pulling her daughters indoors, away from praying neighbors' ears. Her voice was loud and hard. There was blackness in her eyes, like the blackness of the skies before thunder. How could she have been so blind? She cursed herself for it, and harsh question burst from her lips. "How does you bring so much shame upon us, girl? What worthless layabouts does you throw yourself upon? What men have you now? Have you now? No decent man, that does be sure. And why does you blacken your father's nap like this? At your age, the man as didn't even live to see you born. Thank the God he didn't know of this." Mr. got some explaining to precious man of God, child. At last her words were exhausted, and she sat down heavily, her weak heart pounding dangerously, and her chest heaving from the excitation of her outburst. Then Ginny told her mother of the afternoon that Ravi Kirjani had raped her. There was a long silence after that, and all you could hear was Miss Narine wheezing. When at last she spoke, her words were heavy and disjointed. "If anybody have to get damnation, that Kirjani Boyle will get it," she said. Ginny's sister was awestruck. "So take her over the health center, ma?" asked Indra. "The midwife comes today. Is you crazy, girl? You all does know how that woman does run. She mouths like a duck's bottom. You all leave this to me." That night, Miss Narine took her young daughter to see Dr. Khan, an old friend of her husband, whose discretion she could count on. There was no doubt about it. The child was pregnant. "And what can us do, Dr. Khan?" asked Mrs. Narine. "Marry her off, quick as you can," the lean of old daughter replied bluntly. Miss Narine scoffed. Who will take her now, doctor? I just beg you. There's nothing you can do for us?" A welcome breeze come through the slats of the surgery windows. Outside you could hear the shrill, persistent sound of cicadas, while mosquitoes crowded at the screens, attracted by the bare bulb over the simple desk. Dr. Khan sighed and peered over the frames of his glasses. Then he lowered his voice and spoke warily, like a man who said the same thing many times. "I may arrange something for a baby once it's born. But it must be born, my dear. Your daughter is slimly built. She's young, a child herself. To you, she looks barely 3 months pregnant. Don't fool yourself. If the date she's given us you are correct, in 3 months she'll be full term. Anything now will be too messy. And if it's born, must flatteringly, if it's born, what does happen then?" "No, ma. I want it anyway. I want to keep it," said Ginny quietly. "Don't be fooled, child. It was my baby, ma. I want to have it. I want to keep it. And was to look after you and pay for the baby. Even if that Kirjani does get Grace to pay, who does you hope to marry? I'll marry, don't worry." "You'll marry? You just be a fool. Who will marry you? Kirjani, ma. I'm going to marry Rafi Kirjani." Dr. Khan gave a chuckle. "So that is not such foolish a thing. He said I told you. marry her off, and the Kirjani boys won't try. What does the sea have to lose? She's too clever. So Rafi Kirjani was confronted with the pregnant Guinea and reminded of that Sunday afternoon, in the dry season, when the cans were ready for harvesting. To the surprise of the Narins, he did not argue at all. He offered at once to marry Ginny. It may be that for him it was a welcome opportunity to escape from connubial arrangement for which he had little appetite. Though Sunita Murpalani, indisputably not background, nobody ever pretended that she had looks, or possibly he foresaw awkward police question that might have been difficult to answer once the fruit of his desire saw the light of the day. Mrs. Narin has staggered. Even Ginny was surprised at how little resistance he put up. Perhaps, she thought with a worried smile, he's not really so bad. Whatever his reason you had to admit Rafi acted honorably, and so did jilted Murpalani family. In privately they felt their humiliation keenly. Publicly, publicly they bore with composure, and people were amazed that they remained on speaking terms with the man who had insulted one of their women and broken her heart. Sunita's 5 brothers even invited Ravi to spend a day with them at their seaside villa in Mayaro. As Rafi had been a friend of the family all his life, he saw no reason to refuse. Tumor Polani brothers chose a Tuesday for the outing. There was little point, they say, in going at the weekend when the working people littered the beach and one of their Land Rovers for the 20-mile drive from Rio Cristalino. They were in high spirits and joked with Rafi while their servants stowed cold chicken and salad beneath the rear bench seats and packed the iceboxes with beer and puncheon rum. And they scanned the sky for clouds and congratulated themselves on choosing such a fine day. Suraj, an eldest brother, looked at his watch and his feet shifted uneasily as he said, "It's time to hit the road." His brother gave a laugh and clambered on board. It was an odd, sardonic laugh. The hardtop Land Rover cruised through Rio Cristalino to the crossroads at the town center. Already market traders with pitching their roadside stalls and erecting great canvas umbrellas to shield them from sun or rain. The promise of commerce was in the air, and traders looked but expectantly as they loaded their stalls with fresh mangoes or put the finishing touches to display of giant melons whose fleshy pink in hearts glistened secondly under cellophane. The Land Rover turned east towards Mayaro, and moments later was passing the cemetery on the to market, and the frequent bends and the potholes made the journey slow. At last, on an uphill, straight about 6 miles from Mayaro, the Land Rover was able to pick up speed. Its ripped tires beat on the reflector stops like a drum roll, and early morning sun flashed through the coconut palms. Suddenly, a terrible thing happened. The rear door of the Land Rover swung open, and Rabbi Kirjani tumbled out, falling helplessly beneath the wheels of heavily laden truck. At the inquest, coroner acknowledged that nature and extent of Rafi's injuries made it impossible to determine whether he was killed instantly by the fall or subsequently by the truck. But it was clear, at least he felt, that Rafi had been alive when he fell from the Land Rover. The verdict was death due to misadventure. 3 days later, our Rafi's remains were cremated according to Hindu's rites. As usual, crush of people from all over China, that distant relatives or classmates, anyone claiming even the most teeniest connection with the dead man, come to mourn at the riverside pier outside Mayaru. Some of them were convinced that they could see in Ravi's death and hands of the gods, and they pointed for evidence to the grey sky and the unseasonal rain, but the flames defied, and rain and the stench of burning flesh filled the air. A few spoke darkly of murder. Did not Murpelanis have a compelling motive, and not by chance that did they have the opportunity and that means, but mostly they agreed that it was a tragic accident. It was little difference that was a Murpelani track that had finished Rafi off. Murpelani tracks were everywhere. They were watched as the ashes were thrown into muddy Otoy River, soon to be lost in the warm waters of the Atlantic. Anyway, said the one mourner with a shrug, who are we to ask questions? The police closed their files on the case before the boy was called, and he shook. The last of the rain from his umbrella slapped impatiently to a mosquito. You might have thought that the shock of Ravi's death would have included in Ginny premature delivery, but quite reverse. She attended the inquest and mourned at the funeral. The expected that came and went. 6 more weeks elapsed before Ginny, by now 13, gave birth to a son at the public maternity hospital in San Fernando. When they saw the baby, the nurses glanced anxiously at each other. Then they took him away with the girl, letting Ginny see him. Eventually, they returned with one of the doctor, a big Creole, who assumed his most unraveled bedside manner to reassure Ginny that the baby as well. It's true, his little pasty, my dear, he said as nurse placed the baby in Jenny's arm. But you see, that will be a late delivery. But and don't forget, you're very young, and you've both had a rough time. Wait a day, 3 days, his eyes will return. He will soon have a healthy color. Ginny looked into her son's blue eyes and kissed them, and in doing so, tremendous feeling of tiredness suddenly came over her. They were so very, very blue, so like Father Oliver's. She sighed at the irony of it all. The best of it all was the Creole doctor really so stupid? Surely he knew as well as he did that the palette looks could never go. That's it. That's very long. 9 page. Thank you for watching, Mr. Angga. Okay, bye.